Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name's Alex from Nuravine, and I'm super excited for you to be here on this exciting occasion. We've been working on this business for over 4 years, and so this launch means a lot to us, and I can't be thankful enough for everyone here that has joined. So the way this event's going to work is I'll just give you a little bit of a backstory about our business, how we've started, and then I'll go into some of the products that we're offering. I'll show how our doser works really well for recirculating systems, get into how it can also be applied for a batch system, and then we'll go into how you can control everything from the web application. Afterwards, we'll have a quick video from one of our customers we've had for the longest, and then afterwards we'll get into some Q&A. So I started this business about 5 years ago when I met my business partner, Adrian, who's at the control center right now. And I found that we had a really fantastic working relationship because we both studied together in a computer engineering class, and sometimes you meet someone and you can just work super well with them. So I wanted to start a business with him because he was an incredibly intelligent person. And so one day I told him, I was like, hey, Adrian, we should get into business together. And so he said, oh, what's a crazy idea that you've had that is a little bit out of this world? And so I told him that I was thinking about building a skyscraper in New York City that was completely roboticized and was able to basically grow plants and then have those plants harvested by the robots, sent into self-driving cars, and then distributed throughout the city so that everyone could get high quality food in the most efficient way possible. Now, most people would think I was crazy, but he was like, you know what, that's actually a really interesting idea. So why don't we start on something smaller by building a farm in a box where you use a computer to grow plants and go from there. And so we ended up starting our business at our school. And through that process, we learned a lot more about the agriculture industry. And we found out that there's a lot of issues with today's agricultural practices, such as crops being shipped really far distances, or crops grown outside in inefficient ways that are using too many nutrients, creating runoff, and a whole mess of problems that is really unsustainable. And one of the numbers we heard a lot was the year 2050, where there's going to be about between 9 and 10 billion people. And if we don't really improve our agricultural system, there's going to be some major problems. And through more research, we actually found we got into the cannabis industry. We found that the cannabis industry was really pioneering a lot of the technological development that's going to make farming a much more efficient process. And so we learned about this industry, and then we started connecting with a lot of different cultivators and people in the industry because we wanted to learn why are we not as far as we can get today. And we found that there's a lot of issues when it comes to collecting data and when it comes to dosing nutrients. And that was really what stuck out to us. And we realized that we could add a lot of value into the industry in that way. And so without further ado, I want to show you the product that we have developed that basically can work for recirculating systems really well. So let's get to it. All right, so here we have, this is the Alchemist, and then these are the Elixir pumps. We've got this all plumbed in line, so it works with a recirculating system. It's as if it's part of the system. And what we provide is everything between these two blue ball valves. So you can get the manifold from us, all the sensors, all the tubing, all the pumps, everything you need to get set up really well. Why don't we focus on the Alchemist first and go through some of those features. So what you see here is the Alchemist, which is the main controller, and you're going to have all your sensor readings in real time right there. So we've got our electrical conductivity, our pH, and then our temperature. And then in addition, we have an ORP and a DO sensor. So ORP stands for oxidation reduction potential, and it basically gives you an idea of the electrochemical environment of the reservoir. Now, when you have a very low ORP, it can mean a lot of things, but a lot of times it means that you have a lot of unwanted pathogens or buildup in the system, and it's going to prevent you from getting the maximum growth out of your plants. And so dosing things like hypochlorous acid solutions can help you to raise that level, but it's a very important variable that can help you get another dimension of understanding about your system. Also with dissolved oxygen, it gives you an understanding of how much oxygen is actually in the water so that the plants are able to absorb the most amount of nutrients possible. Now, say your oxygen levels went really low on one of your systems, you might want to go and check on it and see what the problem was, because it could very well be that maybe one of your pumps is broken, which would reduce those oxygen levels. So gaining that insight can allow you to solve a problem before it becomes too big of an issue. Now, let's go a little bit into the menu, because basically we provide a lot of different features that make this thing really easy to use, and one of them actually comes from the units themselves. Now, this is an international device designed to work all around the world and with any different type of nutrient. And so we provide a lot of different units that you can use. So if I go into sensors right here, units, you can see that we have microsiemens right here. We also have millisiemens, and then ppm 500, 640, and 700. So if you're not sure what those are, your nutrient feed charts will definitely use one of those nutrients. We also can provide the temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit, so whatever you prefer, that can be done. So we also have a calibrate process, and we want to make sure that the process was really easy to do. So if you're inexperienced with calibration, or maybe you have an employee that is new, that you want to make sure your system is really well calibrated, you could just click here, calibrate any of the sensors, and it'll actually take you through a calibration wizard. So it'll tell you step by step exactly what steps you need to do. And even us, like, say you have to calibrate something, it's always helpful to know exactly what steps you need to take. And you can kind of see right here, these are the type of instructions that you would get. So going back, let's take a further look into the Elixir pumps for a second. So right here we actually have two pumps that are connected to the Alchemist, and they're actually daisy chained together. We have a special protocol that allows as many pumps as you want connected. It's over 100 that can actually be connected to each other, so way more than you'd ever need. Now, we designed the system to be modular and expandable. Basically what that means is if we ever create any new modules that can integrate to the system, that the product that you would get today would be capable of utilizing those future modules in the future. Now, another thing that's good is, like, say you were to get another Elixir pump, like say you thought, oh, I only need 6 pumps, and then in the future you need to upgrade. Upgrading is like super easy. So these pumps are peristaltic, and they're very accurate. Their flow rate is about 200 milliliters per minute, and they can dose all the way down to about half a milliliter. So you can get extremely precise with your dosing. They can also be calibrated, and that's actually one of the best features of this system for a couple of reasons. So because we want to make sure that you can use all different types of nutrients, some of them are a lot more viscous than others. We have customers, for example, that are doing silica, and that pumps a lot slower flow rate because of its viscosity. But because you can calibrate the pumps, maybe with a more water-like solution, it can dose at 200 mils, but a viscous solution, it doses at 100 mils. The machine knows how long to be on to get you exactly what you need. Another thing that's really cool is that these pumps, we have tested them to pump from over 100 feet away. And what that means is if you have one device here or multiple devices and you have your nutrient tanks in another room, you can run the line all the way over there, and it can pump from that distance. Now, because it's pulling so much volume, it's going to be a little bit lower of a flow rate. But again, once you calibrate the pumps, it's going to be extremely accurate for whatever you're using it for. So let's go ahead and look back into the menu and just see all the different features that we have with these pumps. So I'm going to click on pumps right here. And what it's going to show us is the names of all of our pumps. So the pumps are completely dynamic, meaning you can use them for whatever you want. A pump could be a pH pump, a nutrient pump, however you want to create it. So let's go ahead and click on Veg A. And so you see the different options that we have here. You can obviously change the name. You can prime the pumps. You can calibrate like we got into. And then we can get into some of the dosing features. Now, we haven't talked about the autonomous dosing aspects of this system yet, but here we have something called quick dose, which is great if you wanted to say dose maybe some hypochlorous acid solution. So you would just click on quick dose right there. So we'll enter the amount. So why don't we just enter 10 milliliters, and then we'll click next. So then I'm going to push start, and we're going to see that the pump is actually going to start dosing. All right. So now we can go through some other features. So we have quick dose, and then we also have something called time dose. Now, this is something that we learned from one of our cultivators, because for us, basically the reason the system exists is because we've spoken with so many growers and learned exactly what everyone wants. And so we learned that, you know, maybe you could dose 10 mils instantaneously and that would be good, but it's also really great. I mean, one of the amazing things about an automated system is that it can do stuff over a very long period of time. And so say you wanted to dose maybe like 100 mils over 2 hours, you could allow the system to do that as well. So I would just go to time dose and I could do, say, okay, 100 mils. And then I could choose how much time. So if I wanted to do it for 2 hours, then I could just type in 120 and then I would go to the next step. Like, I don't think we're going to wait for that right now. But I think you get the idea. You can use that feature as well. One last feature on the pumps is quantity dosed. And so we've basically created a little, it's almost like an odometer for your car. It tells you how much this pump has dosed. You can reset it if you want. And what's good about that is you can keep track of how much nutrients your pump is using. And so that way, if you ever needed to get new nutrients, you would know kind of when the system is running low. So that's a feature we haven't implemented yet where like it tells you that it's running low, but that's something that we would make in the future. And then maybe even a little bit further out we're thinking about is you could actually have it order nutrients once it gets to a certain level. So stuff like that we're thinking about. And that's why we made the system the way we made it. It's very modular, very expandable. It's we built in software updates. So this thing is completely wireless, can be updated remotely in the firmware, which is the software on the device, the cloud, which you can get to in a moment, and then even adding new modules. It's always going to be upgradable. All right, so now let's get into the actual the rules. So we designed this thing with recirculating systems in mind because those are the hardest systems to maintain, especially when you're getting into the later stages of growth where the plant are using a lot of water, using a lot of nutrients, changing the pH very frequently. We needed to make sure it could handle basically everything that's going on with these systems. But we also didn't want to make it too complicated to use. And so that's why we put a lot of the intelligence into the system. We allowed the system to kind of figure out what's going on and then constantly be adapting. So at the end of the day, you have it exactly like you want it. So what I would do is I go into rules, and then we see we have 3 rules right here. We've got an EC rule, I got a pH up and a pH down rule. So if I click on EC, so these are all actually already created because it's blue. So I'm going to click on this EC, I'm going to delete the rule. And so then I'm just going to create a new rule, show you how we create rules. So what you would say is like, okay, let's say I want my EC to be 2000. Or let's see, 2000. All right, so once I've chosen the EC, then I'm going to select whichever pumps I want. So for an EC rule, what you do is you're going to choose the pumps in the ratios that you want, and then it's going to keep dosing it in that ratio. So we'll click next. So we'll go with our veg A. Let's say we wanted to have 6 mils per gallon of veg A. We want to have 6 mils per gallon of veg B, and then 3 mils per gallon of CalMag. Now we're done. And that's it. The rule is actually already been created, and you could start dosing immediately. We have put a couple other options in here as well if you wanted to get a little bit more fine-tuned with your dose. So what you would actually do is you'd go back into the rule, and you see how we have an activation. So by default, it's going to basically activate when it's 20 EC lower, and so that's keeping it like pretty dialed in, right? So it's like at 2000, if it goes to 1980, it's going to get brought back up. You can almost think about it as your deadband. But say you want to let things swing a little bit more, we could say put it down to maybe 1800. And so that way it can, like once it gets down to 1800, then it'll go back to 2000. Also, we have something called max step. And what that means is it's basically like instead of going from, say we were at 1000 and we were going to 2000, we might not want to just dump a lot of nutrients in all at once and get it up to 2000. We may want our plants to have more time to really get used to the nutrients and go up gradually. And so that's why we gave you the option to have step sizes. But again, if you want things to happen more quickly and you're okay with more nutrients getting dumped in, you could say maybe put a step of 500. And so that's pretty much it. The pH up and down, the rules are very similar. And so I think that does it for this part of the demo. because we made this system to be the best doser for all of hydroponics, and so it works extremely well with recirculating system, but it also works super well with a batch tank. So I want to show you how we've implemented the system using a batch tank. So right over here is the setup for batch dosing. So this is your tank. This is a 55-gallon drum. What you would do first is you'd have some source of RO water. So that RO water would turn on, fill up the tank, and then once the tank is filled up, we could kick on the doser and start getting your tank to the levels that you wanted. I want to show you how this works on the menu over here and show you a little bit of the differences between how to use it for a batch and a recirculating system. So I would go into the menu. Now, before I go into rules, I actually want to show you a little bit more of the setup because this applies to both systems. If I click on Reservoir right here, we're going to see the size of the system. So you're going to enter the size, and that helps the algorithm get an understanding of how much it needs to add. Then we also have a mixing time here. So for a batch tank like this, it really doesn't take that much time to get mixed up. But say you had a recirculating system where it takes more time to get homogenized, you might want to increase the amount of time for the mixing time for that. And just one thing I forgot to mention about the recirculating system is the way that we actually do it is we will dose in small increments. So as the system is circulating, it's actually just adding a little bit along with the flow, and that way the system will get mixed up much more quickly and more evenly. We also have a feature called delay dose. And so for example, say that the system gets activated, but this tank is not yet filled up. What will happen is it will get activated. It's like, okay, I want to dose, but I'm now going to wait 5 minutes until I'm sure that what I read is representative of the conditions of the system. And this could be good for this type of setup. Also, maybe if you're doing like an ebb and flow system and like the water that comes in is not necessarily yet ready to be dosed, it can wait a certain amount of time. So now we have our reservoir settings all set up pretty well. We can go ahead and look at our rules. So we got our EC rule right here. And again, we've got our desired, we've got our activation. Go to the dose amounts. We can just leave things as is. So we'll make sure that they would get to the level that we want. And here we have a max step of 500. Because in this example, it doesn't really matter how quickly the nutrients, like we don't need to be that gradual with it because the plants are not actually connected to this system. And so that's pretty much it. And once, so this thing is ready to go, it's going to just start circulating. So you'd have one pump next to this barrel, and it's going to start circulating. Once everything gets dosed to the right levels, we would have another pump maybe over here that would kick on and then send the nutrients wherever you need them to go. Before we finish on the batch doser, I want to show you a little diagram of what it would look like in a real facility. So just to kind of reiterate, like the first step would be filling the tank up with water, and that could be controlled by a solenoid. You could use some kind of timer to do that. I mean, obviously in the future, we're thinking about making sure that all these things can be controlled by the alchemist so that it's a very neat and easy to use system. But you know, in the meantime, this works for that. Currently, we would help you figure out a way to make sure that all these automations could take place. So this gets filled up, then this closes. Step 2, kick on the pump, dose the nutrients and pH, kind of circle that way, make sure everything gets really nice and mixed up. Then step 3, turn off this pump, turn on this pump, and then send it to whichever zone you want to send it to. And so currently it's going to work based on having one recipe, kind of like what we showed you, but what's going to be coming down the line is a much more advanced platform where you can basically have multiple recipes in a schedule, and say you had different zones that had different recipes, the tank could do different recipes one after the other, make sure everything gets what they need. So let's now take a look into the web application and show you how you can control these devices remotely, because we wanted to make sure that these devices are super easy to control from wherever you are. I mean, we want to make sure you can control them from the device itself, but also from the cloud. So here we have 2 systems. These are real-world systems that are currently dosing. And what you can see is that there's 2 cards. Now, if you had multiple cards, you would be able to see all of them at the same time. And so that could be pretty useful. And what we have here is you have just the name of the devices. You have whichever room they're in. We have the time. This is the last time that the data was been sent. And then you're going to see all of your current sensor readings. And also, of course, you can see the fact that these are actually dosing right now. So let's go in and actually look a little bit more into what's going on with this web app. So right here, we see the name. We see that there is currently a software update. We're not going to do any updates now because these things are actually working. And then here we have the settings. Now, these settings are a lot of the same things that you could do directly from the device. It might be a little bit hard to see, but at the bottom, there's a red thing that basically says you can't change the settings while the device is active. We've taken a lot of time to make sure that there's a lot of safety mechanisms in the software, both on the web app and on the device itself, to make sure that there's as few mistakes as could possibly happen. Okay. So here we have our graph, and it's showing all the different data that is being collected. And right now, this is a 1-day view. You could view it over 1 day or maybe 3 days. You also have a date picker, so you can kind of choose whichever view works the best for you. So you can see right here, I'm kind of like zooming, like moving my mouse around, and the readings are changing. And so that way you can get a glimpse of what those readings were at any point in time. If you want to remove any of these graph elements so that it's easier for you to analyze, you can simply click on them like this. Or if you want to only highlight one, you can just double click that way. And so that way you can see your pH. Also, it might be a little bit hard to see, but these cards will also show you the minimum and maximum at that viewing range. And you can also zoom in just like this. And that way the viewing range shrinks, and then you'll have a little bit of a tighter window. So down here we have the dosing, where you can actually see where all the doses take place. And so each one of these columns represents a dose, and how it's broken down is which different nutrients were added. So we can see this one right over here has CalMag, Veg A, and Veg B. It might be a little bit hard to read, but it's going to show you exactly the quantity of each liquid that was added. And then the other number at the bottom will show you the entire amount of nutrients that were added during this viewing window. Let's just get a little bit of a look at how we can see how the dosing actually affects our data. So let's focus a little bit on the EC. We can see right here, it looks like there was a little bit of maybe a partial change out, because we were at about 480, and then it dropped down to 380. And so we can see how after this dose, the device went up from about 370 to maybe like 421. So it went up by about 50, and then it went up by another 50 based on another dose. And so it kept dosing until it got it to the desired amount. One other cool thing that you can see, especially I think with the temperature, is pretty interesting. So for the temperature, it's like hard to notice anything that's that interesting, but say let's look at it on a 1-week scale. You can really see how the temperature is going up and down, and that is because of the day and night cycles. The lighting is having a big impact on the temperature, actually, of the reservoir. And so there's a lot more cool things you can do just by analyzing the data. I'm sure that a lot of you will find really interesting ways to interpret this data and find ways to improve your grow. And then you can see here, this is a week, 1 week of dosing, and you can see there's a lot of doses. There's a whole bunch of doses, and that's because this is kept with a really small deadband. And because it has a small deadband, it's just going to constantly dose and keep it dialed in. And you can see this is something that would be almost impossible for someone to actually keep track of if you wanted to keep it that dialed in. And then similarly, like with the graph on the top, you can always remove different elements if you wanted to view things in a different way, whatever is most convenient for you. And of course, you can edit the rules. So like we showed you on the main device, you can edit the rules there, but you can also set the rules just the same way here. Again, because this device is not, because this device is working, we do not want to make any changes right now. So we're not going to do that. So let's go to the next device. And so this is actually the device that I was showing you before in this room. I'm going to click on the device. And let's see. So we're currently inactive. So I'm going to set a rule. Let's set the rule a little bit higher. Let's try to make our EC, let's try to make it 2,500. So this is definitely going to want to activate. So I'm going to click apply. And then I'm going to click here where it says inactive. And that's the button that allows you to turn it on. So now I'm going to click active. And then we'll go over to the device and we'll see it turn on. All right, so it's currently in the initializing state. So when you first get it going, it's going to collect several sensor readings to make sure that it can do the best dosing it can do. And now it's turning the pumps on. Oh, and one last thing is that the way we've designed it, it's going to dose each pump with a gap of time. And because we don't want things to mix together, especially like your A and your B, there's enough time so that like the A gets mixed in with the system before the B gets dosed. And so that's it for the demo. We're going to throw on a quick video testimonial from one of our customers that we've been working with for over 3 years. They're doing some incredible stuff. They actually have a robotic farm where they're doing robotic seeding and harvesting. And so during the time you get to watch this video, you also could ask any other questions that you might have. So take it away, Adrian.
Yeah, so my name is Jonathan Toll. I am co-founder and lead grower at Evergreens Farm. My main job is making sure that the plants are happy and they're growing just fine. So that's pretty much my day-to-day for the most part, aside from other R&D and product development stuff. So the Elixir has been incredibly helpful for my tasks. Before having the Elixir, I had to manually monitor and adjust our nutrient solutions and such, which was a very time-consuming process and took away a lot of time to other aspects of the business that we had to also focus on. And so in general, having that manual process was also not really sustainable for the long term. And so once you guys, Nuravine, ended up providing us with the Elixir, the Elixir ended up taking over those manual processes of monitoring and adjusting the nutrient solutions for our plants, while additionally even providing a higher level of precision and resolution in being able to do that. So in general, this has actually opened up time in my hands, which has been wonderful and has allowed me to focus my energies a little more on the R&D end of things and product development too, instead of just having to focus strictly on those manual tasks. And this whole process has been incredibly helpful too, in the sense that you guys have also provided us with a lot of support throughout the process. And we have also ended up giving you guys feedback through it, and you guys have been very receptive of it. And having this one-on-one with you guys has been incredibly helpful and something that we're very appreciative of. So the biggest thing is being able to be much more precise with our sort of like nutrient formulations and making sure to provide everything in a much more accurate dose. Before, when you're doing it by hand, you're mixing it and so on and so forth. Yeah, you can pour in a little bit of solution here and there, but having the level of precision from the peristaltic pumps, which can be down to the milliliter, is awesome. And additionally, by having such resolution and precision, we can also push the envelope of growth and even see where then it no longer helps with the plants, actually. So we can fine tune it even more so. And that has really helped us in not only the R&D end of things, but also developing our product more so. Oh, I only have had I would say, definitely a 15% growth and 15% boost in growth. And that has been majorly due to the fact that the Elixir can provide such precise measurements, and with that level of resolution too. Oh yeah, so at least from our perspective, working with you guys has been a great has been a great experience, because you guys have been very receptive to our feedback and helping us out throughout the whole process, and we're thoroughly grateful for that. And knowing that there's this product, the Elixir, available, is something that we personally think it is, for us, it has been 100% worth the investment to dive into. And knowing that not only there's the product, but also the team, the Nuravine team behind this, makes us feel really solid and grateful for being able to move forward with our own products and move forward with our own development, knowing that we have a component, you guys are kind of helping us out in being able to take that step further with more confidence too.
All right, so it looks like we don't have any questions, so I'm going to take that as a huge compliment that everything has been explained extremely well. So before we close out, I just want to give you guys a couple more pieces of information. So first of all, if anyone has any questions in the future or would like to get in touch with me or any of those things, my email is alex@nuravine.com. Secondly, we are now launching the product today, so you can get one of these systems today. So just to give you an idea of the pricing on the systems, these are typically $949 for the pump modules and $1499 for the Alchemist. But we have a special launch pricing, so instead of $949, it's only $639 per Elixir, and then instead of $1499, it's $1199 for the Alchemist. Now that price will be effective today until the end of the month, so I highly recommend you take advantage of this opportunity. We also do have probably a limited amount of units, and if there's a chance that we will sell out before everyone has a chance to get one. But we want to make sure that everyone that is investing in us gets to take advantage of this opportunity. And so even if we run out of units, as long as you pay for your product between now and the end of this month, you get to lock in that price. And I would say if we run out of systems this week, we might be able to get a couple more, or we might be able to get the next run of them between 6 and 8 weeks, but hopefully sooner. And so that does it. And again, I just want to thank everyone for being a part of this. I'm sure a lot of you have been part of our journey. We've learned so much from everyone, and all the support we've gotten has allowed us to do what we've done. And so thank you so much, and I hope to talk to some of you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.